There's a pattern that shows up repeatedly across some of the most accomplished minds in history. Darwin spent years deliberately limiting his social circle after returning from the Beagle voyage, turning down invitations, ending surface-level friendships, redirecting that energy entirely toward his work. Einstein was famously described by colleagues as warm but unreachable, present in a room without ever fully being in it. Tesla lived his final decades in near-total isolation and called it his most productive period of his life. The people around them thought something was wrong. The people around them were missing something, because what looked like withdrawal from the outside was something else entirely on the inside. And neuroscience now has a precise explanation for why it happens and why the people it happens to are not broken. They are, in a very specific biological sense, built differently. Here's the assumption most people carry without ever examining it: that social engagement is uniformly positive, that more connection equals more well-being, that the person who declines the invitation, lets the message go unanswered, or quietly steps back from a friendship is doing something wrong, avoiding life, retreating from reality, failing at the basic human task of belonging. This assumption is not just imprecise. For a significant portion of the population, it is neurologically backwards. In 1996, psychologist Elaine Aron published research identifying what she called sensory processing sensitivity, a measurable, heritable neurological trait present in approximately 20% of the human population across every species studied, from fruit flies to primates to humans. People with high SPS don't just experience the world differently in a subjective sense. Their brains physically process incoming information more deeply and thoroughly than the neurological norm. Every social interaction, every conversation, every environmental stimulus is processed through more neural layers, cross-referenced against more memories and emotional associations, and held in working memory longer than it would be in a standard neurological profile. The result? The same social environment that feels stimulating to most people feels genuinely depleting to roughly 1 in 5. This isn't sensitivity in the colloquial sense, fragility, oversensitivity, being easily hurt. It is a structural difference in how the nervous system handles information volume, and it has a direct, measurable consequence. When the nervous system is processing everything more deeply, bandwidth becomes the limiting resource. There is only so much cognitive and emotional throughput available, and when that throughput is consumed by high-volume, low-signal social interaction, conversations that carry little meaning, relationships that demand performance without offering depth, there is nothing left for the things that actually matter to that person. The withdrawal that looks antisocial from the outside is often from the inside, an act of neurological self-preservation, and once you understand the biology underneath it, everything looks different. Let's start with what's actually happening in the brain during social interaction, because most people have never thought about this at a mechanistic level. Every social exchange requires the brain to simultaneously run several demanding cognitive processes. It is processing verbal content, the literal words being said. It is reading nonverbal cues, facial microexpressions, vocal tone, body posture. It is accessing social memory, everything stored about this person, this relationship, this history. It is modeling the other person's mental state, what they're feeling, what they want, what they're not saying. And it is monitoring its own output, managing how it is being perceived in real time. For most people, much of this processing is handled efficiently at a low level of conscious engagement. The system runs in the background without consuming significant foreground attention. For people with high sensory processing sensitivity, more of it runs in the foreground, more of it reaches conscious awareness, more of it is processed explicitly rather than automatically. The result is that a 30-minute conversation that costs a neurotypical person a small amount of cognitive energy costs a highly sensitive person several times that amount. Neuroscientist Bianca Acevedo at UC Santa Barbara conducted fMRI studies comparing the brain activity of highly sensitive individuals with controls during social processing tasks. The findings were striking. Highly sensitive participants showed significantly greater activation in the insula, the brain region responsible for self-awareness and empathy, and in the mirror neuron system, which underlies our ability to model and resonate with other people's emotional states. In other words, they were feeling social interactions more intensely at a neural level, not performing more empathy, but actually experiencing more of it, involuntarily, as a function of how their nervous system is wired.
This has a consequence that most people in these individuals' lives never understand. It is not that highly sensitive or deeply self-aware people don't care about relationships. They often care more acutely than the people around them. The withdrawal isn't indifference. It is the nervous system protecting its capacity to actually show up for the relationships that matter by reducing exposure to the ones that don't. There's a second mechanism operating here, one that develops over time rather than existing from birth. Psychologists call it signal detection improvement, the brain's tendency to become more accurate at identifying patterns the more examples it processes. For most people, social pattern recognition operates at a relatively coarse level. They notice obvious behavioral signals. Someone is angry, someone is lying, someone is disengaged. For people who have spent years processing social interactions more deeply, pattern recognition becomes extraordinarily fine-grained. They begin detecting signals that most people never register consciously. The subtle inconsistency between what someone says and how they say it. The behavioral pattern across months that reveals motivation the person themselves may not be consciously aware of. The structural similarity between a current situation and one from years ago that ended badly. Carl Jung described this as the development of what he called the psychological function of intuition, not mystical knowing, but pattern recognition operating faster than conscious analysis. The highly aware person doesn't always know how they know, they just know. And over time, that knowing makes certain social environments impossible to engage with in good faith. Here is where the shadow side must be acknowledged, because any honest treatment of this territory has to include it. The same neural architecture that enables deep pattern recognition and genuine empathy can also become a justification for avoidance. There is a meaningful
difference between withdrawing from genuinely low-signal relationships to protect bandwidth from meaningful ones and withdrawing from discomfort that would actually produce growth. High sensory processing and developed pattern recognition do not automatically confer wisdom about which is which. The risk for people in this profile is what psychologists call over-prediction of negative outcomes, using pattern recognition to anticipate pain in situations that might, if engaged with, have produced something valuable. Discernment and avoidance can feel identical from the inside. Knowing the difference requires a level of self-honesty that doesn't come automatically. It has to be deliberately cultivated. This is not a character flaw. It is a predictable consequence of a nervous system that is very good at protecting itself. But it is worth naming directly. Withdrawal can be wisdom, and withdrawal can be a sophisticated form of hiding. The biology doesn't determine which one it is, the person does. What does determine which one it is, and what separates the Darwin-level transformation from simple isolation, is whether the withdrawal is directed towards something or simply away from everything. Purposeful solitude produces output. It generates the books, the work, the creative production, the deepened relationships, the internal clarity that represents the genuine payoff of this neurological profile. Unfocused withdrawal produces none of those things. It just produces distance. The people who navigate this well, who use their sensitivity and their pattern recognition as assets rather than burdens, share one consistent characteristic. They have learned to treat their attention as a finite, precious resource, and they have become ruthlessly intentional about where it goes. Whether you recognize yourself in this profile or someone close to you, here are 4 evidence-based practices that work directly with this neurology rather than against it. Protocol 1. The social energy audit. For 2 weeks, immediately after any social interaction longer than 15 minutes, take 60 seconds to record 3 things: who you were with, how long the interaction lasted, and, critically, your energy level immediately afterward on a scale of 1 to 10 compared to before. Don't interpret, don't judge, just track. After 2 weeks, review the data. Patterns will emerge with striking clarity. Certain people, certain contexts, certain formats of interaction will consistently appear on the draining end of the scale. Others will appear on the restoring end. This isn't about eliminating all draining interactions. Some of the most important relationships in life require energy expenditure.
It's about making conscious, data-driven decisions about where your finite bandwidth goes, rather than defaulting to availability. Research on cognitive load management consistently shows that awareness of energy allocation patterns is the prerequisite to changing them. You cannot optimize what you haven't measured. Protocol 2, the signal quality filter. Before committing to any social engagement, a meeting, a social event, a conversation you've been putting off, ask one specific question. What is the signal-to-noise ratio of this interaction? Signal: genuine exchange, mutual growth, real information, authentic connection. Noise: performance, obligation, surface-level transaction, repetitive patterns that never evolve. This is not permission to only engage with easy, comfortable interactions. High-signal conversations are often challenging. Difficult feedback is high signal. Honest disagreement is high signal. A hard conversation with someone you care about is high signal. The filter is not comfort, it is meaning. If you can articulate what genuine value for you or the other person this interaction could produce, engage. If you cannot, that is data worth taking seriously. Protocol 3, the directed solitude practice. The difference between productive solitude and simple isolation is direction. Solitude without direction is just loneliness with extra steps. Design your solitude the same way you would design a high-value work session. Before entering a period of intentional alone time, define one specific output, a decision you need to reach, a problem you want to think through, a creative project you want to advance, a relationship you want to reflect on honestly. Research on incubation thinking, the cognitive process that occurs during undirected but purposeful mental rest, shows that solitude produces its highest value outputs when it is preceded by a specific question or problem. The mind needs a target to work on. Without one, it defaults to rumination, which looks like solitude but functions like anxiety. Give your solitude a job, and it will deliver results that focused analytical thinking often cannot. Protocol 4, the discernment versus avoidance check. This is the most important protocol for anyone in this profile, and the most uncomfortable. When you find yourself withdrawing from a person, a relationship, or a social context, pause and run a 2-question audit. Question 1, what specific pattern have I observed that is driving this withdrawal? If you can answer this concretely, with specific behaviors, specific evidence, a specific dynamic you've tracked over time, the withdrawal is likely discernment. Your pattern recognition is doing its job. Question 2, is there any version of this situation that could produce genuine growth or value? And am I withdrawing partly to avoid the discomfort of finding out? If the honest answer is yes, if there is a version of engagement that would challenge you in a way that might actually matter, that's not discernment. That's the nervous system's self-protection mechanism operating beyond its useful range. The goal is not to override your sensitivity. It is to ensure you are its author, not its passenger. Darwin didn't stop engaging with people because he disliked them. He restructured his engagement because he understood at some level that his attention was the irreplaceable input into everything he cared about, and that diffuse social obligation was consuming it without producing anything in return. The withdrawal wasn't the point. The work was the point. The withdrawal was just what protecting the work required. This is the distinction that separates a transformation from an escape. One is directed towards something real. The other is simply directed away from something uncomfortable. If you've recognized yourself in any of this, the pattern recognition that never fully turns off, the conversations that cost more than they should, the growing sense that your circle needs to be smaller but more genuine, you are not broken, you are not antisocial, you are not becoming cold. You are navigating a neurological profile that the world doesn't explain very well, in a social environment that wasn't designed with your bandwidth in mind. The question worth sitting with isn't whether to withdraw. That impulse, if you have it, is going to be there regardless. The question is what you are building with the space you create. Because the people who are remembered, the ones who produced something that outlasted them, weren't the ones who attended every gathering and answered every message. They were the ones who knew exactly what deserved their full attention, and they protected that knowledge fiercely.